I decided to tell the story of World War II in a way it has never been told before. One day at a time, in strict chronological order, using only verified historical facts. No speculation, no dramatic fiction. Just what actually happened, when it happened, and why it mattered. This series will cover all 2,194 days of the war from September 1, 1939 to September 2, 1945. Each episode follows the same structure: the global context at dawn, the events as they unfolded hour by hour, the key decisions made that day, and the immediate consequences. We will not jump ahead. We will not look back with hindsight. We will experience the war as those who lived through it did, one uncertain day at a time. This is Day 1. At 4:45 a.m. on September 1, 1939, the German battleship Schleswig-Holstein opened fire on a Polish military depot at Westerplatte near Danzig. The shots were not the first acts of German aggression against Poland, but they marked the moment when localized border incidents transformed into full-scale invasion. Within hours, 1.5 million German troops would cross into Polish territory along a front stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Carpathian Mountains. Europe awoke on September 1, 1939, to a continent that had avoided general war for 21 years. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, had redrawn borders and established the League of Nations to prevent future conflict. That system had been steadily eroding. Germany, under Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist Party, had remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936, annexed Austria in 1938, and occupied Czechoslovakia in March 1939. Each action had been met with diplomatic protests but no military response from France or Britain. Poland stood as the next target. Hitler demanded the return of Danzig, a predominantly German city placed under League of Nations administration after World War I, and extraterritorial road and rail access across the Polish corridor, a strip of territory separating East Prussia from the rest of Germany. Polish Foreign Minister Joseph Beck rejected these demands in March 1939. Britain and France responded by guaranteeing Polish independence, pledging military assistance if Germany attacked. Behind the diplomatic maneuvering, military preparations accelerated. Germany had been rearming since Hitler took power in 1933, violating Versailles restrictions. The Wehrmacht had grown from 100,000 men to over 3 million. The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, possessed approximately 4,000 aircraft. New tactics combining tanks, motorized infantry, and air support had been tested in training exercises. German planners called this operational concept Bewegungskrieg, war of movement. Foreign observers would later call it Blitzkrieg. Poland mobilized cautiously. Full mobilization would strain the economy and might provoke Germany. Partial mobilization began on August 23 after Germany and the Soviet Union signed a non-aggression pact. Polish military strength stood at approximately 1 million men, 880 tanks, 400 aircraft. Polish defensive strategy relied on holding border regions until French and British forces could attack Germany from the west, forcing Hitler to fight a two-front war. France maintained the largest standing army in Western Europe, approximately 900,000 men, with millions more in reserve. The Maginot Line, an extensive system of fortifications along the German border, anchored French defensive planning. Britain's army was smaller, about 897,000 men, including reserves, but the Royal Navy remained the world's most powerful maritime force. British strategic planning assumed any European war would be lengthy, allowing time to mobilize imperial resources and impose an economic blockade on Germany. The Soviet Union observed from the east. On August 23, Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov and German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop had signed a non-aggression pact in Moscow. Secret protocols divided Eastern Europe into German and Soviet spheres of influence. Poland would be partitioned. The Baltic states would fall under Soviet control. Stalin bought time to prepare for an eventual confrontation with Germany while securing territorial gains. Civilians in Warsaw, Paris, London, and Berlin went about their daily routines on the morning of September 1st with varying degrees of anxiety. Some believed war was inevitable. Others hoped diplomacy would prevail as it had during previous crises. Few understood that the decisions made by governments over the previous weeks had already set events in motion that diplomacy could no longer stop. Chronological events of the day. At 4:45 a.m., the Schleswig-Holstein fired its 11-inch guns at Polish positions on the Westerplatte Peninsula. The battleship, ostensibly on a courtesy visit to Danzig, had been positioned for this mission. The bombardment continued for 7 minutes, targeting bunkers and fortifications. Polish soldiers under Major Henryk Sukarski returned fire with artillery and machine guns. The garrison numbered 182 men tasked with holding a position designed for 800 defenders. Simultaneously along the border, German forces began crossing into Poland. Army Group North, commanded by General Fedor von Bock, advanced from Pomerania and East Prussia. Army Group South, under General Gerd von Rundstedt, pushed north from Silesia and Slovakia. The invasion force included 5 panzer divisions and 4 motorized divisions supported by 1-600 aircraft. The Luftwaffe launched attacks across Poland at dawn. Bombers struck airfields, destroying Polish aircraft on the ground before they could take off. Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers attacked railways, bridges, and communication centers. Fighter aircraft strafed roads and troop concentrations. By mid-morning, the Polish Air Force had lost approximately 30% of its operational aircraft. Many had been caught during refueling or maintenance. Polish forces along the border fought back. The Wawinska Cavalry Brigade engaged German armor near Mokra. Polish infantry divisions defended fortified positions along the Naru River. Anti-aircraft batteries fired at German bombers over Warsaw. But the speed and coordination of the German assault overwhelmed static defenses. German units penetrated deep into Polish territory, bypassing strong points and advancing towards strategic objectives. At 6 a.m., German forces seized bridges across the Vistula River at Cho and Dirschau before Polish engineers could destroy them. These intact crossings allowed German armor to advance without delay. In the south, the German 10th Army crossed the border near Częstochowa, beginning a drive toward Warsaw. Panzer units moved ahead of infantry divisions, exploiting gaps in Polish defensive lines. In Warsaw, air raid sirens sounded at 9 a.m. as German bombers appeared over the city. The first bombs fell on the Okęcie airport and the Mokotów district. Polish fighters attempted to intercept, but were outnumbered. Anti-aircraft fire brought down several German aircraft, but the majority completed their bombing runs and returned to their bases. Civilian casualties were reported by mid-morning. Simultaneously along the border, German forces began crossing into Poland. Army Group North, commanded by General Fedor von Bock, advanced from Pomerania and East Prussia. Army Group South, under General Gerd von Rundstedt, pushed north from Silesia and Slovakia. The invasion force included 5 panzer divisions and 4 motorized divisions supported by 1-600 aircraft. In Berlin, Hitler addressed the Reichstag at 10:12 a.m. He declared that Germany was responding to Polish aggression. He claimed Polish troops had attacked a German radio station at Gleiwitz the previous night, killing German personnel. This incident, actually staged by German SS forces, provided the pretext Hitler wanted. He announced that Germany would fight until Polish resistance ceased. The Reichstag deputies approved his statement with applause. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain received reports of the invasion at his country residence, Chequers, during breakfast. He returned to London immediately. The cabinet met at 11:30 a.m. to discuss Britain's response. Foreign Secretary Lord Halifax proposed issuing an ultimatum demanding German withdrawal from Poland. If Germany refused, Britain would declare war. The cabinet agreed, but decided to coordinate with France before taking action. In Paris, French Premier Édouard Daladier and Foreign Minister Georges Bonnet learned of the invasion early in the morning. The French government faced domestic political divisions. Some officials advocated immediate military action. Others argued for continued negotiation. Daladier supported honoring the Polish alliance, but French military commanders cautioned that mobilization would take weeks. The French army was not prepared for immediate offensive operations. By afternoon, German forces had advanced 20 to 30 miles into Polish territory along multiple acts. The Polish Pomorze army, defending the Polish corridor, faced encirclement as German units advanced from both north and south. The Krakow army, positioned in southern Poland, withdrew under pressure from the German 14th Army. Polish cavalry units conducted counterattacks against German infantry, but suffered heavy casualties when encountering armored formations. At 5:40 p.m., the British ambassador to Germany, Sir Neville Henderson, delivered a message to the German Foreign Ministry demanding immediate cessation of hostilities against Poland. The message stopped short of an ultimatum, but made clear that Britain expected German forces to withdraw. Henderson did not receive a response from German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop, who was at the Chancellery with Hitler. Throughout the afternoon and evening, Polish military commanders sent situation reports to headquarters in Warsaw. The reports were consistent. German forces were advancing rapidly. Coordination between Polish units was breaking down due to disrupted communications, and casualties were mounting. Requests for reinforcements could not be fulfilled because reserves were still mobilizing. In the evening, the Luftwaffe conducted additional bombing raids on Warsaw and other Polish cities. Wielun, a town near the German border, was heavily bombed early in the morning, with significant civilian casualties. Bombing continued throughout the day as German aircraft attacked military targets and civilian infrastructure. Polish anti-aircraft defenses shot down approximately 20 German aircraft on September 1st. But this did not significantly reduce German air superiority. By nightfall, German forces had established bridgeheads across several major rivers. The 4th Panzer Division reached the outskirts of the Tuchola Forest. The 1st Panzer Division advanced toward Piotrków. In the north, German forces surrounded Polish defenders at Westerplatte, who continued to resist despite overwhelming odds. The garrison would hold for 7 days. Polish government officials assessed the day's events. The speed of the German advance surprised Polish commanders, but there was no panic. Military planners believed the initial German momentum would slow as supply lines lengthened and Polish forces regrouped. More importantly, they expected French and British intervention within days. Poland had fought alone for 1 day. That was anticipated. Fighting alone for weeks was not part of the plan. In London, Parliament convened for an evening emergency session. Members demanded action. Chamberlain announced that Britain had sent Germany a warning demanding withdrawal from Poland. He did not announce a declaration of war because France had not yet coordinated its response. This delay would cause political problems over the next 2 days as Parliament and the public pressed for immediate action. French military commanders met in Paris to discuss operational plans. General Maurice Gamelin, commander-in-chief of French forces, outlined preparations for a limited offensive into the Saar region once mobilization was complete. The plan, eventually executed as the Saar offensive, called for French forces to advance a few miles into German territory, establish defensive positions, and wait. This was not the massive Western offensive Poland expected, but it was what French military doctrine and political will could support. The Soviet Union made no public statement on September 1st. Soviet military units near the Polish border remained in position. Stalin watched to see how France and Britain would respond before making his next move. The secret protocols of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact gave the Soviet Union rights to eastern Poland, but Stalin would wait until German success was assured before claiming his share. In the United States, President Franklin Roosevelt received reports of the invasion. America remained officially neutral, bound by neutrality acts passed by Congress in the 1930s. Roosevelt personally opposed German expansion, but faced domestic opposition to American involvement in European conflicts. He issued a statement calling for peace and urging belligerents to avoid targeting civilians. American public opinion was divided, with many Americans determined to avoid repeating the experience of World War I. By midnight, German forces occupied Polish territory extending 30 miles deep along the entire front. The Wehrmacht reported approximately 50 aircraft lost and several thousand casualties. Polish losses were higher, but not catastrophic. The Polish army remained intact and fighting. Command structures were strained, but functional. The question was how long Poland could sustain resistance without Allied support. The key decision of the day. On September the 1st was made not by Hitler, whose invasion had been planned for months, but by Neville Chamberlain and the British cabinet. They chose to issue a warning to Germany rather than an immediate declaration of war. This decision reflected the complexities of alliance coordination, domestic political considerations, and lingering hopes that German aggression could be contained through diplomatic pressure. Chamberlain's government had guaranteed Polish independence in March 1939. When Germany invaded, Britain was legally and morally obligated to respond. However, Chamberlain wanted to coordinate with France, and the French government was internally divided. French Premier Daladier supported intervention, but elements of the French government and military urged caution. Coordinating declarations of war between two major powers with different political systems and military doctrines took time. Chamberlain also faced pressure from members of his own cabinet. Foreign Secretary Halifax and First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill, argued for immediate action. Chamberlain agreed in principle, but insisted on following diplomatic protocols. The warning delivered on the evening of September the 1st gave Germany a chance to withdraw and gave Britain and France time to present a unified response. This delay had immediate consequences. It signaled to Germany that Britain and France might not follow through on their guarantees. It disappointed Polish leaders who expected immediate Allied military action. It created domestic political turmoil in Britain as members of Parliament and the public questioned the government's resolve. On September 2nd, Chamberlain would face fierce criticism in Parliament for not declaring war immediately. The declaration would finally come on September 3rd at 11 a.m., 2 days after the invasion began. Immediate consequences. September the 1st, 1939. Set in motion events that would expand into a global conflict lasting 6 years. The immediate military consequence was the destruction of Polish defensive positions along the border, allowing German forces to drive toward Warsaw and other strategic objectives. Polish military commanders now understood they faced a coordinated, mobile enemy using tactics unlike anything they had prepared for. The political consequence was the activation of alliance systems that had been dormant since World War I. Britain and France were committed to defending Poland, but their responses would be slow and ultimately insufficient to save Polish independence. This failure would define the first year of the war, as Hitler continued expansion while Western powers struggled to formulate effective military strategies. The diplomatic consequence was the collapse of any remaining illusions about Hitler's intentions. For years, European leaders had debated whether Germany's territorial demands were limited or unlimited. September the 1st answered that question. Hitler was willing to use military force to achieve his objectives regardless of international agreements or diplomatic guarantees. Appeasement as a policy was dead, though its formal burial would take 2 more days. The strategic consequence was the exposure of Poland's geographic vulnerability. Surrounded by German-controlled territory on 3 sides and facing a hostile Soviet Union to the east, Poland had little margin for error. German forces could strike from multiple directions simultaneously, and Polish interior lines of communication were shorter than the front line they had to defend. Without immediate Allied intervention, Polish resistance was measured in weeks, not months. The human consequence began on September 1st with the first military and civilian casualties. German bombing of Polish cities killed and wounded hundreds. Polish soldiers died defending border positions. German soldiers died in combat against determined Polish resistance. The scale of death would escalate dramatically over the coming years, but it began with individual tragedies on this day. September the 1st also marked the beginning of Nazi racial and political policies in occupied Poland. SS units followed Wehrmacht combat formations with orders to eliminate Polish leadership, clergy, intellectuals, and Jews. These operations, initially limited in scope on the first day, would expand into systematic murder over the following weeks and months. The Holocaust did not begin on September the 1st, but the invasion of Poland created the conditions that made it possible. For millions of ordinary Europeans, September the 1st was the day uncertainty ended. War had begun. The question was no longer whether there would be war, but how long it would last, how far it would spread, and who would ultimately prevail. Those questions would not be answered for years. This was the first day of World War II. The conflict that began on September 1, 1939, would continue for 2,194 days, touching every continent and claiming millions of lives. Each day mattered. Each day changed the course of history. If you want to understand how this war unfolded, one day at a time, subscribe to this channel and follow along. We'll be covering every single day in order with the same dedication to facts and respect for those who lived through it. See you tomorrow for Day 2.